I work at Nexus Creative. I'm a graphic designer. I've been here for about a year now. A lot of my day-to-day involves dealing with briefs from clients and creating visuals and prototypes and sort of demonstrating ideas for people. It's an interesting one. So I did A-levels. I started my sort of post-GCSE journey. Did A-levels. I chose music, art and English and maths to begin with, English literature and maths. And then sort of a couple of months in, I was like, don't really fancy maths anymore. So I changed over to music technology. So I ended up doing music technology and fine art. Then I went on to university after that and studied music composition at Coventry University, which, you know, was sort of like a logical step then. Well, just as I was about to leave university, because we had to create a final sort of portfolio, which was like an album, and have various writing to go with it. We had to create our own album covers to go along with it. And suddenly I was like, hang on a minute, this is someone's job. How do you do that? Like, what is that? But I felt like it was too late to find out at university at the time. So I left university and I became a music teacher. And I was a music teacher at a secondary school for 5 years. But during that time, I was, again, that thought didn't really leave me alone. And I was very much like, I want to pursue, what even is that? Because I didn't even know I was quite naive to it all. I didn't really even know what the term was for that job. And I was like, oh, graphic design. I'm very much interested in that. And yeah, like I said, while I was a teacher, I was sort of finding out more and teaching myself more about that sort of thing. And I think, 2019, I enrolled on an MA course to study graphic design for real, because, you know, being a teacher, education is sort of key. So did my MA sort of while I was working as well as a teacher during the pandemic. So partially I started at university, and then we had sort of a few months of working online, and I came out of that and did all right. And then I started looking for other jobs, and this is my first job in graphic design full time. I think it's being tenacious enough to be like, hang on a minute, I'm not getting the most out of my days here. And I think that times really, you come home when you're not doing something that you really enjoy, and you sort of think, you either change this or you accept it. You either change your path or you accept it. And I think that it was very much on that level of being, like I said, tenacious enough to sort of turn around and go, no, I'm not going to settle for this. I'd like to do something different. And yeah, it came from being dissatisfied with where I was. Like I said, taking control of where I wanted to be. Ingenuity, being able to sort of take it upon yourself to, I think when you're a teacher, a lot of the time, even though it's fairly prescriptive in terms of what you're teaching, I think you need to be able to think on your feet very quickly. And that's something that shocked me at first, because I was like, I don't know what to say. But then I think that's something that's translated quite well, because, you know, the situation's much like us right now, where you have to think on your feet and you're asked questions. And when it comes to working with clients, when it comes to being creative, I think you need to be able to think quickly, and you need to be able to sort of come up with ideas how you're going to solve problems. Problem solving is another one. Problem solving, that's another thing. Again, when you are in a classroom setting, when you're in that sort of way, lots of things crop up that you do not expect. I'm trying to create a parallel here between problem solving in a creative way and problem solving in a sort of everyday sort of way. And I think that there is, but I'd suggest that's a key skill as well, being able to sort of solve problems creatively. People skills as well. Not that I think I'm particularly gifted in that sense, but I make an effort to, and I think that that's always been something that I've valued, even since when I was like at school. When I didn't do homework, or when I didn't sort of do these things, or I always felt like if I built a relationship with a teacher, if I'd built a relationship with somebody, there was a lot more value in that than sort of just being like, I haven't done it, so whatever. Or you learn as you go forward that having those soft skills with people it's really vital. And again, it translates into everything I sort of do now. Deal with a client face to face, or if I have to sort of do emails and things, yeah, it's really key for me. But before that, I'd done GCSE art and I did A-level art, and they were really fantastic. Like, I really enjoyed that, but becoming an artist is a tricky career to sell to people. It's like, what do you want to do, mate? Oh, I want to be an artist. Oh, you want to sit around waiting for the good things to happen or whatever. Much like being a musician, it was all up in the air and but I really enjoyed that, because it was very much like, here you were given briefs a lot, you were given a word or you were given a phrase, and it was like, create something in response to this. And I really enjoyed that. But again, when I went off to university to do music, I thought, well, that's sort of passed me by now. So I would suggest, yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I had been creative before, but when I was like, hang on a minute, making album covers is a job. I'd say yes, absolutely, that was the turning point for me. Well, it's varied. It's a really interesting question actually, because it's very varied. And you know, in a place like this, it's not just because some places have specific focus areas in graphic design. So you know, some places can focus on websites and specifically digital stuff. Some companies can focus on sort of branding and things like that. This is such a multifaceted sort of place. It's hard to sum up and predict what I'm going to be doing on a day-to-day basis. I suppose a lot of the time it's working within the constraints of what a client needs and wants. For example, at the moment I'm working on some year-in review material for social media for some clients. I think it's like 2-3 clients want that. So it's a case of putting together a visual that's for use on social media. That's one example. There have been other things, like just before Christmas, I was working on a theatre guide for a local sort of theatre company. So again, like that feels very different. Like those are two, and that was a physical print as well, you know. So we were really focusing on print, we were focusing on layout, we were focusing on all those sorts of things, like paper samples and stuff. So like really, it's never straightforward. It's mainly concerned with the visual. There's conceptual stuff in there as well. So no, if somebody comes to you and they say, oh, we want a rebrand, or if we'd like a brochure, you're not just going, right, I'm going to make this look really nice, because that isn't at the core of it. At the core of it is target audience, what you want it to say, what's the sort of core message, whether they'll sort of be conscious of that or not, but you are sort of creating subliminal messages through visuals, and that's really interesting. Like, regardless of what that format is, that's a really sort of key undercurrent of what graphics is. So a lot of the time I'm using the sort of Adobe softwares, so Adobe Illustrator, Adobe Photoshop, Adobe InDesign, Adobe After Effects, that's another one that I use semi-regularly. But then again, you know, there are other things where I'm sort of using the Acrobat to edit PDF, Microsoft Word quite a lot of the time, PowerPoint, that sort of area of stuff that, again, mainly concerned with the visual. So that's a really interesting point actually, because I feel like the technology, the sort of expensive equipment, that's like the end point. That's the end point of, it's the means to an end, because beforehand there's lots of skills before you even tackle that. That is simply to translate your ideas into something that is usable. Before that, a lot of it is sketching, a lot of it is to formulate concepts, understanding the principles of design. Because actually that's really, again, it's even more interesting in a way, because when I was teaching myself early doors, before I sort of really got into it, I wasn't going to go out and spend loads of money on all this hardware and software. So again, I actually had to do that. So it was very much about research, it was very much about reading, it was very much about looking at visuals and understanding why they work, understanding why they're good, and yeah, working on sketch, being able to sketch a little bit and being able to sort of, formulate concepts and be conscious of why they work before you even get anywhere near the software. So maybe books, arty books. Hesitant initially. Actually, we were talking about sort of tenacity, wasn't it? When I knew what I wanted to do and I knew that was the path I wanted to take, I was fine with that. But initially I was very hesitant, and I'm not sure that I can do that. I'm not sure that's a path for me. I'm not sure that I'm good enough to do that. I felt a bit like I'd missed the boat. Whereas actually then I would turn around to my younger self and say, no, you can do this now. Rather than sort of spend a few years really questioning being a teacher or really questioning that environment, you can do this now. You can be brave enough to change this now. You know, that's what I'd say, is that don't wait. Being proactive is the best thing you could do.